Today we're taking a deep dive into some unexpected transfers. There's a little bit of Ballon d'Or agenda pushing, and on top of this, loads of social reaction from around the footballing world. I'm Matt from FourFourTwo, and here's what's on our feed. Right, first things first, we're heading over to Reddit because that's where all good social videos start. We should be expecting the unexpected in the transfer market, and I actually think there is some sense in that sentence. I'm going to use Noni Madueke from Chelsea to Arsenal as an example. I heard about these rumours and I came across this Reddit thread from 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 apparently because of some much needed depth, or a terrible move because, well, nobody really actually says why it's a terrible move. There's just some really amusing phrases like, that's a scam, this is a misuse of funds, which sounds overly political, and stop justifying this transfer. I actually am going to try and justify this transfer for Arsenal. First off, from Chelsea's point of view, it's a very smart deal. They're making a profit on the player they signed 2 years ago. He's been good for them. It's not a key component. It's not like they're selling Cole Palmer or anything. And they're also slimming down, or attempting to slim down, a rather large squad. So from Chelsea's point of view, perfect. Great for them. As for Arsenal, initially, like I said, I thought Madueke's good, right? But are they really going to go to their London rivals and find their next best player when he's not their best player? I wasn't so sure. However, although £50 million does seem like a lot, it covers a real pain point for them, and that is the strength in depth. Arsenal, like plenty of other teams last season, saw an injury crisis which really affected, and obviously not only the numbers in their squad, but the way they played as well. And I actually think Madueke could really solve this problem. Saka was obviously injured for quite a long period of last season, and more than just having to replace him with another body, not having someone who directly replaces the way that Saka plays, then means that Arsenal play differently. I mean, look at all of these stats. All of the stats in this table show that in all competitions last season, with Saka, they were a lot better in stuff like goals for, expected goals, chances created, total shots, shots on target. You get the picture. Without him, all of those numbers dropped. Their team, their scouting team, must have then gone and looked at, right, who are we going to replace Saka with should he get injured again, or even if they just need to give him a rest in midweek. And it turns out, because I've done a little bit of digging as well, especially using Opta stats, that there is one player who is most like Saka in the whole of Europe. And that is Noni Madueke. According to Opta analysts' compare feature on their website, Noni Madueke is 89.02% just like Bukayo Saka. In terms of all the criteria they put forward. And it's actually unbelievable. With 11 goals and 3 assists last season, plenty of touches in the box, attempted dribbles and shots, and he doesn't really reduce the competencies that Arsenal face down the right-hand side. But the other thing on this chart that I think is really, really interesting is the defensive actions. They're fairly high. The possession won is also fairly high. This shows you that not only are these important things for an attacker in the modern game, but also that Mikel Arteta and his scouting department are really prioritising this because defending from the front, because of the way they press, is so important to them. They need an attacker who's going to do it as well. So actually, based on all of those stats, based on the fact that Madueke is a lot like Saka, and regardless of which one's playing, they're going to have someone who fits the team as well as brings the same sort of things to the table. This is really good. This feels like a really good deal. Yes, 50 million feels like a lot of pounds. I was going to say a lot of money. But then again, that's buying from the Premier League for you these days, especially buying from a London rival and another team who's in the Champions League too. Next up though, an interesting post I saw on Facebook. This is Mohammed Kudus moving to Spurs. Again, this is slightly unexpected. Or should it be? Should it be expected? Let's get this out of the way first off, because actually it's really funny last season. Mohammed Kudus will have to walk into Spurs, if he does sign, on his first day and probably do a bit of an apology to 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏 and 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗧𝗏. West Ham lost at Spurs and Kudus got sent off and a further 5-game ban for, let's call it what it was, slapping and pushing 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏 and 𝗵𝗏𝗏 in the face. So that was quite funny. I'm sure he'll be bridge under the water once he signs for the club, but he'll definitely have to have a word with them, or rather they'll have a word with him. But as for the actual transfer, it's a bit odd on the face of it, I'll give you that. West Ham weren't very good. Kudus didn't exactly shine like, I don't know, any sort of player of the season shouts or anything, massively important that West Ham did last season. Kudus wasn't really on the face of it. However, there are a few numbers that do lead me to believe Kudus could be good for Spurs, but it may require a little bit of repositioning. Just look at the numbers of positions that he played in last season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not including sub, because that counts all positions, 6. 6 different positions in the front line / attacking third for Kudus. No wonder he couldn't put together any sort of form. He didn't even play more than 10 games in the Premier League in one given position. But yeah, I get that there's a skill in being flexible and being a threat all over the pitch. But he didn't exactly shine. We're talking 5 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League. His XG is minus 1.9. His 75 shots resulted in just 5 goals, which is a really poor 6% conversion rate. So I don't really think there's a case to be made for Kudus coming in and being a centre forward, even being a backup centre forward. So the second option is, what about a winger? At West Ham last year, he had the most successful passes in the final third, the second most successful passes in open play, the second most successful dribbles and progressive dribbles, the highest rate of successful crosses. Sounds good. Not exactly. There's a little bit more behind the data than this suggests. The most successful crossing rate was actually only 1 in 4. And for all his ball carrying last year and progressive dribbles, he ended up with 26 shots, 14 chances made, but of those, 0 goals and 0 assists. The reason those stats are so damning is that to be a winger in a Thomas Frank system, you have to be scoring. Bryan Mbeumo is the perfect example of this. Last year, right winger, 20 Premier League goals. Yeah, if Kudus is going to come into this team and be the right winger, he's going to have to do exactly what he hasn't been doing for the last few years at West Ham, which is getting into dangerous positions and providing goals and assists on a regular basis. This leads me to another conclusion, that Kudus might be best in that central attacking midfield role for Spurs. Last season, when it came to 𝗕𝗫𝗀𝗍𝗫 at Spurs, and I guess you could say that they were pretty bad all round, but specifically in the midfield, Spurs were terrible on the transition, both defensively and offensively. They failed to hold on to the ball. They lacked the ability to beat a man in one-on-one situations. And I feel like Kudus could bring all of this into the team. He's got brilliant ball control, fantastic technical ability. He's definitely got the strength to hold off a man and carry the ball forward like we've seen in the stats. And I just think he's a really, really good option. Certainly something different from James Maddison. It's way too early to make this call, but I'm going to make it anyway. Kudus could be a similar player to what Ousmane Dembele turned into at Spurs when he moved from Fulham like 10 years ago. He wasn't scoring a ridiculous amount of goals, but you could see that his talent was there when it came to dribbling, when it came to his strength and holding players off, and when it came to dominating with a high amount of successful passes in the middle of the final third and the pitch. Sounds a lot like the stats that I've just put forward for the Ghanaian international. So, moving further back, as far back, as Dembele did, might not be on the cards. But a little bit further forward, Spurs are going to be possession-based, dominating the midfield and holding on to the ball in the attacking third. Maybe this one actually makes sense. This could be another one that I file under my sort of growing list of expect the unexpected transfers. Madueke and Kudus, I'm dropping them right in there. Right, onto some more Ballon d'Or talk, because there's been a bit of an agenda being pushed by the PSG president himself, 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗍𝗏, who was talking about Ousmane Dembele. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand the calls for Ousmane Dembele to win the Ballon d'Or. In fact, I think he is my favourite, ever so slightly ahead of Mo Salah and Lamine Yamal. Both of them two have had brilliant seasons. Both of them, all three of them, would be worthy winners. But Ousmane Dembele to really use his performances in the Club World Cup, I think it's a bit unfair. Don't get me wrong, he's been good. And if PSG go on to win it, he'll be very good. But the point is, firstly, that Salah and Yamal aren't in this Club World Cup through no fault of their own. And secondly, it's just not up there with the toughest and best and sort of competitions that every team is putting everything into. There's so many factors, from players not really being able to give their best due to the heat, squads that involve some youngsters, a transfer window going on. Obviously, everyone's knackered at the end of the season. I can't really quantify this as a top level competition to then go ahead and justify giving a Ballon d'Or to a player to. If the Ballon d'Or was judged on the domestic cups, the domestic leagues, obviously individual stats, and the European Championships, the Champions League, which Yamal, Salah and Dembele, the front three, were all part of, then it would still go to Ousmane Dembele. But yeah, the PSG president coming out and saying there's something broken about the Ballon d'Or if Dembele doesn't win it is a massive sort of thing to say, purely because we know it's broken anyway. We know that the Ballon d'Or isn't actually an official thing, and I wouldn't put too much stock in it. Right, next up, and I actually saw something very, very interesting on, this was Instagram. This was an Instagram post about Aston Villa spending £20 million on loans in January. The reason I thought it was quite interesting is because loans don't really get spoken about when it comes to a financial outlay. Everyone talks crazy numbers, and there are massive, massive wages in football. But £20 million on loan players feels like quite a lot. However, I get it. You've got to push for the Champions League. Aston Villa in January were like, you know what? We're well in this top 4 race. They've made a few good signings to really push for the Champions League, and it hasn't come off, probably due to a very, very dodgy decision or two on the last day against Manchester United. And, you know, that's unfair for them. But yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting point to make that actually a lot of money does go into loans, even though there isn't a huge, you know, whatever up front. There are some big wages. Asensio was a good signing, I thought. Rashford, maybe not so much. From club football to international football, though, Mauricio Pochettino, this is some excellent memeing. Pochettino and the USA lost in the final to Mexico, 2-1. It's not ideal, and I think it makes a case that Pochettino is in hot water over whether or not he's going to be leading the US out as a home nation next summer for the World Cup. It's not great that they're losing, though, and this isn't just a one-off. I'm not just saying this because they've lost to Mexico in a cup final. Pochettino's overseen 4 losses in a row earlier this year. That was the first time they've lost more than 3 in a row since Jurgen Klinsmann 10 years ago. And given the talent at their disposal, you would think they'd be able to muster up, I guess, a little bit of a better fight when it comes to playing any half-decent teams. Not only is he going to do well to hold on to the job by next summer, but there's going to be a struggle for him to turn his reputation around to then afterwards get any sort of high-level job back in the Premier League or in Europe again as well, which is a bit of a tough one for him. In America, though, we do have the Club World Cup going on at the minute, and 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 Courtois, I can't stop thinking about that save. The strength in his arm, like honestly, this TikTok doesn't do it justice. You need to watch it in as slow a motion as possible to fully get just how ridiculously good that save was from 𝗘𝗫𝗏 Courtois. It just gets better and better and better. I guess that really proves a top-level goalkeeper. That is what, the 96th, 97th minute? Unbelievable goalkeeping. Lastly, and obviously we couldn't speak about everything that's come up on our feed in the last week all over the internet without mentioning the sad passing of 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗧𝗏 and his brother 𝗕𝗓 Silva as well. There was loads of content going around from the likes of Ousmane Dembele and Kylian Mbappe and others who paid tribute on the pitch. I believe it was Raúl Jiménez who also wore a shirt with 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗧𝗏's name during Mexico's win too. That was really, really cool. I just wanted to send on the thoughts and the condolences of myself and everyone here at the FourFourTwo team as well, to the family, friends of 𝗕𝗫𝗍 and Andre and everyone who knew them as well. So I'll leave you with that for this week. If you want to give us your thoughts on this show and any other of the content on FourFourTwo, make sure you get down in the comment section for us. But that's all from me for today. I'll see you in the next video.